Spirit. Amen. Let us continue to pray for peace, for justice. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Amen. Mary, seek our wisdom.
Pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
So we are studying syllogisms, many kinds of syllogism, and this morning we will try to see the many figures of syllogism, the figures of syllogism. To recapitulate, for example, I use the example on your on page 70. All robins are migratory. This bird is a robin. Therefore, this bird is migratory. Okay? Anyway, here I have students who are migratory. You know, the meaning of migratory? They immigrate. So those are coming from Vietnam or South America. They come here, and after that, they come back. Migratory. I am a migratory teacher. I go from Canada to United States to Canada. Migratory. Okay? Immigrant. It is on page 70. 70. Okay? So look at that here. We have first, well, how would we call those two first lines? Antecedent, maybe we call that also the premises, premises. And what is the, if you go to the, here, what is the consequent, or the conclusion. The conclusion. Okay? And the subject is the bird, is migratory. Okay? The bird is, of course, it is undistributed, this bird, and migratory is undistributed. So we start from the conclusion. Every time you study syllogism, always go to the conclusion, the consequent conclusion. Now, if you look at the two premises, the one containing the predicate is called the nature. Usually, it is the one containing the general principle. What is the general principle here? All robins are migratory. That means during winter they go south, and during summer they go north. Okay? Now, the proposition containing the subject is the minor. But the other word, what is that here? The middle term. The middle term. The middle term is the bridge between the subject of the conclusion and the predicate. And we saw that to affirm a judgment, to affirm, we must have a proof. And the proof is given by the premises, by the premises. And what is the way we can unite those two? By using a middle term. So the middle term is the bridge between the subject of the conclusion. It is the reason. Is the reason why we call that a reasoning. What is a reasoning? Is to search for a reason, for a why, for a middle term. Now middle term is distributed, here undistributed. Okay. So now here we have a form of syllogism. In the first, the middle term is subject. And in the second, the middle term is the predicate. And we have the first figure we call sub-3. So sub, and the first here part indicate the position in the major, and pre indicate the position in the hand. So the position of what? The position of the middle term. Because the middle term is the bridge. If it is an affirmative conclusion, there must be a bridge. If it is a negative conclusion, there must be absence of bridge. That means one will be denied. In one proposition, we will deny the relation between the middle term and one of the two terms here. So that is the first figure. The first figure that is also called the perfect figure. Why the perfect figure? If you look at that here, you have the predicate, the subject, and the reason why is in the middle. And you see very well that the middle term is the bridge between the subject and the predicate. That is the first figure. In fact, every figure we study after can be reduced to the first figure. That is the perfect figure. And if you have to answer, to create a syllogism, try to use the first figure. It is the less tricky. The other are very dangerous. That's the perfect figure. Why? Because at first sight we see very well that the middle term is really the link between the subject and the predicate. And essentially, don't forget, essentially reasoning is to search a reason why. It is search for a middle term. The middle term is contain the reason of the union between the predicate and the subject. That means justifying a judgment. If you say, for example, your mother said, my child is sick, my daughter is sick. She will not go to school because she is sick. So, to affirm that you have sick, you must have a proof. A proof can be fever, it can be indigestion, it can be anything. You must have a reason. We cannot affirm without a reason, except when it is direct intuition. I don't reason to see that you are here. I don't reason, no, I see. But if somebody is absent, suppose someone is absent, I will reason why he is absent, you know. I have to find a solution. If somebody is, father is sick. Father, he went to bishop. He is with his bishop, etc. So there is a reason. That is the first figure. You have that here, very clearly explained. It is the model of all figures. And the model. Okay, it's very, very simple. The first proposition must come. Now in the major, the middle term is the subject, subjectum, sub in Latin, sub. And in the second is the predicate, P-R-A-E, because in Latin they write predicate, P-R-A-E. Well, it is the same as predicate in English. Predicate and subject. Okay. So now, first figure, supre. And continue the text here. It is the easiest to follow in the course of reasoning because of the dictum de omni and nullo applied most naturally to it. So, if I represent that using the circle of Euler, Mr. You remember Euler, Mr. Euler? Okay? Okay, so here I have the predicate, if I have the middle term, if I have the subject. And you see clearly that the middle term is between the subject and the predicate. What is the predicate? Here it is migratory. All those who immigrate, change countries. Okay? What is the subject? This Robin. This Robin. And what is the middle term between them? Bird. No, excusez, Robin.
The bird.
Robin. Robin Hood. You know Robin Hood?
And the bus. The bus.
The
The
bird.
It is his bird. I see it is Monday morning. You know, in Monday morning, classes in many places are like aquarium. You don't react at all this morning. I don't know why. Usually you are. Okay, I come back. So the predicate contains the middle term, and the middle term contains the subject. So here we see very well that what is said of the migratory is said of the robin, is said of the bird. Huh? You remember A and I, or E and O. What is said of A as true is said of I as true. What is said, it is said of E as true, it is said of O as true. What is said of the whole, it is said of the part. It is inclusion. Huh? So the bird are included in the robin, and the robin are included in the migratory. That is the perfect model. Huh? The perfect model. Okay? We see very well here that the middle term is between. Between both. Like here, the middle term is between the subject and the predicate. Okay? So what is said of the all, omni in Latin, omnipotent, omni means all. All. So what is said of the all, it is said of the part. And we see after that what is denied of the all is denied of the part. Okay, now I go to second figure. Okay, that is the first. The first is the model. The model. And the model is supreme. The middle term must be subject in the first, in the major, and must be predicate in the minor. Okay? No question on that? Okay. Now I go to the second. The second is pray. You have that on page 70. Pray. For example, no cow is a carnivore. No cat is a carnivore. Every cat is a carnivore. Okay, let us wait. Or no cat. Carnivore. Conclusion. No.
No cat.
No! Every cat.
No.
Ah, good. I congratulate you because only a few forget that at the exam. The majority, you were attentive to the snare. Huh? No, don't forget, huh? Every cat is not a carnivore. Every cat, that means some cats are, some cats are not. Huh? The every with not is a particular negative. Okay? So no cat is a cat. Of course, they say, Father, it's obvious. I know. I don't need to study logic to know that no cat is a cat. I know that. Yes, I know that you know. But you have to not, here, interesting. We don't, in logic, what is our first preoccupation is not the content, it is the validity of the reasoning, the validity. You cannot say, Father, that is good because that corresponds to the reality. Of course, no cat is a cat, it's true. But that is not a real, it's not a good answer in logic. If you say that, I give you 0. Yes, because what is important is this syllogism respect the law of logic. It is valid. So let us go. Cat is the subject. The proposition is, the verb is?
Negative.
No, is.
Negative.
Negative.
No, it's okay. Very good, very good. Okay, and the predicate? Okay. So no cat, but is the extension? Distributive, and no? Distributive. Okay. That is this. Every cat here distributed. No car distributed. Is?
Negative.
Negative. Oh, excuse me. Okay. Affirmative. What is carnivore? Middle term. What is the extension of the carnivore here? Distributed here. Undistributed. So if you look at the term here, distributed, 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 here at least once. The middle term must be at least once distributed. If you look at that, you have the second figure. But I told you we should always try to take that figure and come back to the first figure. What can you do to transform that into a first figure? You remember when we studied conversion? You remember that? E is converted to E. Therefore, I can write, what I can write? No, carnivore is a cow. So if I write that here, no, carnivore is a cow, I will have, where is the middle term here? Here. And here I have the second, I have the subject and the middle term, so I have sub-pre. So I come back to the, I don't change the meaning, no? It is exactly the same meaning. That is the second figure. Okay? The second figure, it is when I have pre. Pre. That means the middle term is predicate in the first and predicate in the second. Predicate in the major, predicate in the minor. But I can transform that second figure and come back to the first using conversion of proposition. You remember that? We work on that, now we apply that here. Okay? So that is the second figure. We don't change at all the meaning, nothing, because we are allowed to change, to transform no car is a carnivore by conversion to no. No. Okay. Now, I go to the third. Okay, the first figure is sub-pre. The second is pre. So the third one will be pre. So, and first?
No, sub.
Sub. Oh, yeah, fourth one. Okay, sub, and the fourth one will be. Okay, sub, what is meaning that sub? The middle term will be subject. Okay, let us study that now. Okay. Let us take the example we have here. Every seminarian is baptized. Okay. Every seminarian is studying for Christ. Is studying. is a student, okay? Is a student for priesthood. For priesthood, okay? Conclusion. Some student for priesthood, or some studying, etc., for priesthood, is a seminary. No? So seminarian is the predicate, seminarian is the predicate.
There's no baptized father.
Baptized. Thank you. Someone follow.
Nothing.
Okay, so we have seminarian is the
Sunday is a sleeping day.
middle term. Sub in the major, subject in the minor. Baptized is the predicate. Student, it is the subject. So student, subject, predicate. Here, what is the extension of student? Undistributed. Here, undistributed. Here, undistributed. Undistributed. Here, okay. So here the middle term is subject in the major, subject in the minor. Is it possible to have a universal conclusion?
No.
Can I say all students?
No.
Because here it is undistributed. I must write undistributed. Of course, all students preparing for are baptized. Maybe not. You know, an example of that, Saint Ambrose. When Saint Ambrose, Bishop of Milan, at that time he was not bishop, he was the prefect of Milan. He was like the governor of Milan. Okay? And he was a pagan. He was a catechumen, he was not baptized. And they were searching for a bishop, and a child inspired by the Holy Spirit said, Ambrose, bishop. So Ambrose was not baptized. So it's good to say some students preparing for priesthood are not baptized. Yes, are baptized. Okay, I come back to that here. So,
It's unreasonable.
okay, so if you look at the conclusion here, okay, what can you do with that here?
Convert. Eye to eye.
You can also change that. You can show some baptized or some students for, yeah, you can say that. You can also change that here. E to I. You can say some student is a seminarian. I can say that also. If you do that, what you will do, you will have the first figure. If you use that, okay, let us write it down. Every seminarian is baptized. Well, that is the major. Okay. I go to the minor here. Well, every seminarian is a student for priesthood, etc. I can convert is some student for priesthood is a seminarian. Now, if you do that, some student for priesthood is the subject, and you have here the middle term, and you come to the first figure. So we can reduce the third figure to the first when you change the minor. Well, what I say that I want to see, in fact, all the form that here are can be reduced to only one form. And the one form, the best. Why? Because in the first, it is clear that the middle term is the link. Because the role of the middle term is to be a link between the predicate and the subject. So that is the first. The first figure, it is when the middle term is subject in the major, subject in the minor. Sub, sub. First, pre, sub. Second, pre, pre. Third, sub, sub. Here is the fourth one, but the fourth one was not studied by Aristotle. The fourth one was studied by some philosopher coming after him. It is pre-sub. Pre-sub. Okay, let us look.
Further,
Yes,
another
yes.
question. In the first figure and the second figure, the middle term had to be a distributive.
At least one
But
distribution.
this one we have both.
Oh, it's a perfect.
Both perfect.
I can have more, but I cannot have less. I can have twice distributed. That is the best. I can have one distributed, the other not distributed. I cannot have twice undistributed. So, okay, a good question, sister, you do it. The middle term is not a weakness, it is a strength, because the bridge is very solid. In both proposition, the middle term is distributed, not it is without any exception. Okay? I go now to the fourth figure. I will measure my muscle after the class, probably it will go 1 centimeter. It's a good exercise. Okay. Okay, here it is excuse me. The fourth is preso. Preso. That means in the first proposition, the middle term is pre, and in the second proposition, so the middle term is subject. No, like that now. Pre, so. Okay. So let us go to the example they give you here. All gossiper. You know what is a gossiper?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh no, you don't know because there is no gossiper in religious life. If there is one, nobody knows what is a gossip. Nobody knows what is to gossip in the community. No, never. Okay.
But in the newspaper, they have a gospel column.
No gossipers are dangerous people. All gossipers are dangerous people. And the Pope said recently in a homily, he said, those who gossip, they are like someone who stabbed in the back. It's true. Stabbed in the back. We can kill the reputation in the back of other when we gossip. But here, nobody knows what is to gossip. So I'm very happy. Okay. All dangerous people are undesirable, without S. I don't know. I don't think that people like gossipers and desire to have gossipers. Okay? Because they are dangerous. Why? Because they can stab you in the back. As said Francis our Pope. But he repeat what the others said in the centuries before. So conclusion. Conclusion of that. Well, if you look, what is the middle term here? Dangerous people are here are. So two affirmative. Conclusion should be affirmative. What is the extension? Dangerous people here? Non-distributed. Here it is distributed. Okay. And what is the middle term? What is the predicate? Gossiper. And what is the subject? Undesirable. Okay. So what is the conclusion? Subject, predicate. Some undesirable person or one are gossip. No?
Yes.
Okay. Bon. Here we have the predicate. What is the model? The model is here, the predicate, the middle term, and the subject. So we have the predicate goes there, and the subject goes there. But it's interesting, because here we have a conversion. Huh? We have a conversion. When we convert, whatever we convert, the predicate here is distributed. The predicate here it will be undistributed.
Undistributed.
It can be, yes, it can be distributed, but it will be undistributed. Why? Because it is here. So here we have distributed, we have undistributed. Here the subject is necessarily undistributed. So how can we change that to have the first form, the first figure?
We can change.
No.
We can change the first predicament.
Yeah.
No? If you put, you change the two purposes, you put all dangerous people. There you have all dangerous people are undesirable. And you have,
No, I can change the first predicament here.
no, because, okay, here, what you can do here,
Convert.
you can say, some gossipers are undesirable. In fact, we should be able to transform. Look at what they say here. All dangerous people are undesirable. That means the major is here now. So if the major is here, that becomes predicate, and that becomes subject. That is the minor, no?
Yeah.
That is the
Major.
So in the major, middle term is sub. And in the minor, the middle term is pre. So what we have sub pre. So if you change the two propositions, you come back to a figure one, to the figure one. But in fact, we don't take care of the third or the fourth. So we study, when we analyze only the three first. Because in fact that is only, you change the position and you have the first figure, okay? But now, what is important, page 71. But I will not insist too much on the figure. I will say why. Because if you master correctly, perfectly, the rule for syllogism, you don't need to know that. You can analyze, I guarantee, any kind of syllogism with any kind of figure if you know the rule of the syllogism. So I will insist on that. I will not insist on the figure, okay? I will explain that because there is some curiosity you should know, but I will not insist on that because mastering the rule, you master everything. That is important. You know why? Because it is to analyze, to discover what we call fallacies. It will be the chapter 13. In fallacies, many times, apparently seem to be true, but in fact, they are not obeying the rule of syllogism. So we have to master that. It's not difficult. It's common sense. You will see. It's common sense. Okay. Now you know what is a figure. A figure, it is the many disposition a middle term can have in a syllogism. It can be subject, it can be predicate. So there are 4 possibilities, the combination. Okay? Now I go to rule 1. The syllogism may have only 3 terms. 3 terms. That means the middle term must have the same meaning. It must stand for the same thing. If I say, for example, all dogs bark. All dogs bark. You see, there is what do you say? Okay, a constellation called the dog. The dog is a constellation. Therefore, constellation bark. Can I say that? No, I say dog bark. Dog bark. Woof, woof, woof. The bark. Okay. Constellation is dog, therefore constellation bark. Well, here it's obvious that the middle term does not signify the same thing. In fact, many puns, many puns are based on that. On the equivocity, remember, of the middle term. And the middle term has 2 different meanings. It's the same word, but with another meaning. Not exactly the same meaning. It is equivocal. In fact, the middle term must not be equivocal. It must be only univocal. Okay? And if the middle term is univocal, that means the old syllogism contains only 3 terms. No less, no more. Okay? I go to the example. Whoever desires the triumph of justice is a defender of human rights. Okay? Every dictator, Stalin, Mao Zedong, Ho Chi Minh, Hitler, are the one who desire the triumph of justice. Therefore, every dictator is a defender of human rights. You say, Father, it's true. You are right to say that. But we have to, is it true? No. Why is it not? That syllogism is not valid. Why? Because do dictator has the same definition of human right than the Father Malady or the Pope Francis. No. So that's the same thing. Another example. When the employer discusses with the employees about just wage, about just wage. You have that now during the electoral campaign about income tax. It's funny. Not everybody understands the same thing about income tax. About for the boss, the just wage is the minimum. For the employee, a just wage is more than that. It was said in the 19th century the just wage was to feed the horse. Feed the horse, but the horse has a wife, he has children, so he has to pay a rent. So he has to send his children to high school, etc. So the definition was not the same. That means, in fact, to be valid, the middle term must stand, must mean the same thing, must stand for the same meaning. I continue. In the middle term justice here is equivocal, because the same word, but does not contain the same definition. When the Americans discussed with Soviet in 1970, Pax Americana, Pax of the United States, and Pax Sovietica, the Pax of the Soviet, was not the same definition, okay? So the second, the 3 terms, and many times the mistake is in the the two meanings. The middle term can have two meanings. Okay? Secondly, the middle term must be distributed at least once. It must be once distributed. It can be twice, 2 times distributed. That's no problem. But it must be at least one. Okay? The middle term must be at least one universal extension. For example, a good example here, the good. Every carnivore, middle term distributed, has canine teeth to eat meat. Okay? So here, the middle term has a universal extension. Every carnivore needs canine teeth to tear the meat they eat. Okay. Every dog is a carnivore. Okay. So among all carnivore, you have lion, you have tiger, you have dog, you have cats, etc. So, but the dogs are only a part of. Though the middle term here applied to God is undistributed. The middle term is undistributed. Okay? So conclusion, every dog has canine teeth. So you have the perfect. Here we have the middle term universal. After that, you have the subject with the middle term undistributed. And we have the subject and the predicate. So the middle term is really in the middle, and the middle term is a link between dog and canine teeth. Okay, having canine teeth. But a wrong example. All men are intelligent. Maybe some women we doubt about that. But here it's meant as generic. Okay. Are intelligent. So all men are intelligent. All men. Let's continue. All angels. Are intelligent. Therefore, angels are men. You good? Is it good? No. Why? Because it does not correspond to the reality? No. Because the middle term here is twice undistributed. You know, in the group of intelligent beings, you have men, you have angels, and you have God. Okay? So men are a part of. Therefore, intelligence is undistributed. Both. So that means the group of men here is different of the group of angels. Okay? Of angels. But someone will say, no, it's not true, because in Holy Apostle we have an angel. Angel. But he is equivocal. He's an angel without wing. Okay. So this syllogism is not valid enough, because the middle term is twice undistributed. That is many times a big mistake. So first, when you study a syllogism, first you go to the conclusion. What is the subject? What is the predicate? And you discover after that the middle term. Secondly, check. Verify the extension of the middle term. So the second. That many times the mistake is there. And the middle term is twice undistributed. Okay? Remark. The student must always look at the predicate of a nominative proposition, and that predicate is always undistributed. You remember in your examination of logic, syllogism, proposition, I asked you many times, what is the predicate of an affirmative proposition, distributed or undistributed? All that was to prepare syllogism. And we studied that to prepare here. Okay? The third rule, 2 negative premises yield no conclusion. So it is impossible to conclude why Because in two negative, you have nothing in common. Nothing is in common. So we can, two negative, for example, E and E lead to nothing. O and O lead to nothing. E and O lead to nothing, and O and E lead to nothing. That's it. Two negative, we cannot compute, okay? But be careful, be careful. Sometimes they will say, all men are not stupid. Don't forget, all men are not stupid is not universal.
No.
It is particular, because someone are stupid. When you say all Americans are not rich, that means some are rich, some are not rich, you know. So be careful now, because at first sight, we say every universal negative. No, every with not, each with not is a particular negative, okay? I go now to the fourth rule, rule number 4. Two particular premises yield no conclusion. For example, first possibility, because we have three possibilities. And first possibility, it is when we have two affirmatives. That means you have I and I. And we have that in the three figure. In the first figure, first, supre. The second, pre-pre. And the third, pre-sup. Excuse me, sup. Okay. So in the first, the middle term, excuse me, the predicate is in it's here, and the subject is here. Conclusion. Pre, so, predicate here. Middle term, subject, middle term. And the third, middle term, predicate, middle term, subject, object. Don't forget, it is I. What is the meaning of I? Undistributed. What is the meaning of I? Undistributed. Middle term is? Therefore, middle term, twice, undistributed. Second, undistributed, twice, undistributed. The third one, I, undistributed, twice undistributed. Therefore, we cannot have two particular affirmatives. Okay? That means two particular affirmatives lead to nothing. Two particular negative lead to nothing. Why? Because just before we saw that two negative we cannot conclude. And you go now to the third possibility. You have that, huh? Well, here it's more complicated. Particular affirmative and particular negative. I will not write on the board, but look at the paper on your paper. Okay? Well, first, suppose I have universal O and major O. Now the middle term will be undistributed. Okay? And the second, the middle will be also undistributed because it is affirmative. Therefore, it's not good. Okay? I wrote a bar, a line to indicate where is the mistake. The second figure, the predicate is universal, but the middle term is distributed in the first. But in the conclusion, the middle term will be distributed, excuse me, the predicate will be distributed, but is undistributed in the major. Now we see that, second figure, okay? You go to the third figure, the twice middle term as undistributed, because it is a particular bone. If I go to the second line now, I and O, But if I look at I, the predicate is undistributed. Because the conclusion is negative, the predicate is distributed. Therefore, you see, there is more, the predicate in the conclusion is overextended. It has more extension than in the premises. If you go to the second, the predicate is undistributed in the major, but it must be distributed in the conclusion because the verb is negative. If we do that, the predicate in the conclusion has more extension than in the premises. And finally, the third possibility, the predicate is undistributed in the major and distributed in the conclusion, overextended. But it is impossible to have a conclusion from two particular. Okay? If you see, for example, these seminarian Catholic, these sisters are Catholic, therefore these sisters are seminarian. Maybe in the future. Maybe never. Probably, certainly never. Okay. I don't want to talk about that, it's very dangerous. So never terms are more extended in the conclusion in the premises. So if you see the predicate undistributed in the major and distributed in the minor, in the conclusion because it is negative, it has more extension in the premises. You know, when I will ask you a question at the exam, I will ask you not only to say if the syllogism is valid or invalid. I will ask you
Why?
Why? And you have to, it's not difficult. So you build your syllogism like that, and you can indicate the reason. The predicate has more extension in the conclusion than in the premises. Or the middle term is twice undistributed. You know? Okay? We are studying together. Huh? That is studying. We study in team study. Okay, rule 5. Okay, rule 5. The conclusion always follow the weaker part. With a conclusion cannot give more than from what it's coming. I will write you all the possibilities. That is Santa Claus. Oh. Okay. Now, you have all the combination. No, A-I-E-U. Interesting. What is the conclusion of that? Now, we can suppress many things now.
Yeah.
What we studied? We studied that we cannot have two negative, no?
Yeah.
Two negative. Oh, let us begin here. Two negative. O.
Nothing.
E-O. Okay, finish. E-O.
Nothing.
E-E. Okay? After that, what we start with?
Two particular.
Two particular. So, two particular.
I-O.
Here. I-O. I.
That's all.
Okay? You follow me?
Yeah.
So, immediately you eliminate many, huh? Many. Okay. Funny, huh? I like that to destroy. Now I have those possibilities. but not everyone will be good depending on the figure. Okay? So if look at that here, well, that is the same, no problem, is A. Huh? Or we can have also I, because what is true of A is true of I. But it is better when you have the possibility between affirming the universal or affirming the singular, the particular, but is a stronger. The universal, of course, huh? The universal. Okay, here we have A-I-R, interesting, what is I? Particular, the conclusion would be I. Okay, I. So the weaker is the particular. Huh? So if a universal and a particular, the conclusion will be particular. Here I have affirmative, and here the conclusion will be E or O. But not, if E function, you don't change that. Sometimes you are obliged to write O, depending on the context. No? Okay? Well, E, let us for the moment, let us say that. A and O. O. Well, here's interesting. You have first A. But it is negative. So negative particular, it is O. O. Now here, I-A. I-E. A negative particular. O. Negative particular. Here we have E-A. Here we have E-I. O. And finally, here we have no. Two negative will not conclude. Two particular we cannot conclude. When there is a universal and a particular, the conclusion is particular. If one is affirmative, the other negative, the conclusion is negative. The conclusion follows the weaker. The weaker. The weaker is the particular in regard with the universal, and the negative in regard with the affirmative. Okay? It's not difficult. Huh? Okay, I go now to rule 6. The conclusion cannot have greater extension than in the premises. Well, that is, the conclusion cannot conclude more than in the premises. We cannot give what we don't possess. Huh? Okay? So, 7. Never the middle term enters the conclusion. So, never the middle terms enter the conclusion. Well, that is obvious, huh? Because the conclusion is made with the subject and the predicate. If the middle term enter, subject and middle term is not, it is the minor, it is not the. Yeah, I remember what is the definition of the minor? It is the premise containing the subject of the conclusion. What is the major? It is the premise containing the predicate of the conclusion. And finally, two affirmative premises yield no negative conclusion. So that is the rule. With those rules, you can analyze, you can criticize every syllogism. But now, before talking about the particular rule, I will go to page 78. 78, the procedure for a valid syllogism. Because I want you know absolutely that page, very, very important. So, two things are important for analyzing a syllogism. First is to know the terms, subject, predicate, and middle term. Secondly, it is to know the rule. In fact, when you know two or three rules, most of the time the mistake is there. And now, how we can proceed? That is very practical. In fact, that page will summarize what I told you many times. Okay? When you have to analyze a syllogism, first find the conclusion. And what is the subject of the conclusion? What is the predicate of the conclusion? So first you have to fix the subject and the predicate of the conclusion. Secondly, now the major will be the one containing the predicate. and the minor will be the one containing the subject. In fact, the first containing the predicate usually give the general principle, universal principle. The minor, it is a fact, application to something. Okay? When you have that here, when you have the subject and the predicate, a subject, and you have the third one. The third one is the middle term. Huh? The middle term. Okay? Now, be careful. It happens that the minor is the first proposition of the syllogism. What defines the minor is the fact contained, the subject, the one contains the subject. Minor. So the position, be careful, the position of the major is not essential. I can have minor, I can have major, and I can have conclusion. What makes a major is not the position. The major is not necessarily the first and the second. The major contains the predicate, the minor contains the subject. So sometimes the propositions are inverse. Be careful, don't fall into the trap. Huh? So the first proposition is not the major, but because it is the first. It is a major if it contains the predicate. And the minor, it is the one contains the subject. Okay? Now, secondly, note the middle term. Do not forget that the first figure is the perfect one. Huh? So if someone knows very well the 8th rule of syllogism, he is able to criticize all kinds of syllogism without knowing or without using the rule of the 3 syllogisms. Of course, they have a rule for the 3 figures of syllogism, but it's not necessary. So I will not ask you the laws, the rule of the figure of syllogism, or the figure. What I can ask you, it is to verify if the laws are authentic. I will do that in the last minute. Finally, what is the quality of the proposition? Huh? Try to distinguish if it is affirmative or negative, if it is universal or particular. In fact, try to distinguish if it is E, A, E, I, or O. And that is not a waste of time, huh? Because you will see, suppose you have 2 I, or you have 2 O immediately. You say 2 negative, don't conclude, 2 particular, don't conclude. Huh? And you know that the predicate of a subject, the predicate of an affirmative proposition is necessarily undistributed, and negative is distributed. Okay? And finally, apply the general rule of the syllogism. Now, I will end the class by on going back to page 73. But when we, in fact, I already, what is here corresponds to the possible combination. Okay, you have that here. Huh? Now, the first figure, in a first rule, the middle must be distributed at least once. That means the middle term, middle term. And the middle, or the middle term, must be distributed in the major premise. Okay. So, in fact, if you go just page 74, in the rectangle, in the middle of the page, you have the summary. So the major premise must be universal, and the minor premise must be affirmative. And to prove that, you have, for example, if you take a major particular, you will have 2 times you will not be able to answer because the middle term will be twice undistributed. Bon. So here, if you apply those laws to the 16 possibilities, that means the major premise must be universal. Okay, let us go. Oh, we try that. You know how to do that, huh?
Oh.
Nobody reacts.
Very
Okay, good. You follow me. That is a consolation from the teacher. You don't know. Okay. Well, I apply the law. The major must be universal. The major must be universal. What is that?
No, particular.
Yes.
Okay. Now, secondly, the minor premise must be affirmative. The minor must be affirmative.
Yes. No.
No. No. Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes. No.
No. No.
So what we have finally, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have A, the conclusion will be A. That is the first. We have E, A. The conclusion will be E. We have E and I. The conclusion will be O. Okay, now go to
We have one.
page 77. 77. You have that? 77?
Yes.
Figure number 1. First, we have A.
We need one.
Barbara. Well, I don't want to explain to you, I cannot. Well, A. It is a mnemotechnique. Huh? Mnemonics. It is a trick to retain. Don't forget, in the Middle Age, students were not able to buy books. Books were excessively expensive. Only the richest men can do that, or the monastery. So they have to use their memory. Well, but they have a lot of tricks. We call mnemonics. Now, mnemo in Greek means memory. Mnemonic. So Barbara, when they saw Barbara, they know that the major is universal affirmative, the minor is affirmative. And the conclusion, affirmative. The second, Celestine. Celestine. E. I forgot. A. I. So if you go see, it will be Dari. And finally, the last one, Rio. Probably there is an explanation why they write BRB. But what is important for you, it is to know what is the meaning of that. If I say, here is the syllogism in Celestine. What is the meaning of that? You can tell me that the major is E, the minor is A, the conclusion is E. And probably in the Middle Age, they sang that. They have music on that. Because, you know, like children in primary school, they learn many rules of grammar, sing. In French, we have that. No? We have many exceptions. French is a complicated language, very complicated. So to retain the exceptions, we learn bijou, caillou, chou, genou, hibou, joujou, pou. I learned that in the 3rd grade. I only meant that for all my life. You know, bijou, caillou, chou. See, it's the same. Maybe we can invite any kind of memory. We can say Barbara, Celestine, Dari, Rio, something like that, you know. Don't publish that. Okay, now I go to the second figure, the figure pré. And what is the rule? Page 75. 75. And you have the major must be universal. Alors, let us go. Okay, so they say, the major premise must be universal. Figure 3 we have, 2?
Yeah.
2,
3
must be universal. We did not solve that?
Yeah.
We did that, huh?
No, not yet.
Not yet, okay. So if you affirm the major must be universal, you have to suppress all the...
Particular. Oh no,
No, particular.
The major must be universal.
Yes.
But that is
We need the particular one.
Oh, excuse me. Okay.
Yes.
All that, huh?
Yes.
All that. Okay. Now, secondly, one premise must be negative. One premise must be, no, we suppress 2 affirmative, huh? One premise must we suppress here, here.
We don't need that.
Suppress.
That's it.
That's it.
No, we don't.
Okay. E.
So one premise must be negative.
Leo, we don't use that part.
Most premise must be negative.
You can film them.
Negative.
Negative.
Negative. No, that is not good.
No.
That is not good.
Yeah.
Okay. Finally, what we have? We have
4.
E, A, O here, and we have. So if you look at the page on page 77, we have A, E, A, E, E, A, E. E, A, E, 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 A, E. We have A, E, E, A, E, E here. We have E, I, O, E, I, O. And finally, we have A, O, O. A, O, O. So if you have that, what you have? You have Cesare, Camestres, Festino, Barocco. And finally, you go to the third figure, sub, and you, and the minor premise must be affirmative, the conclusion must be particular. So if you do that, you arrive to here, a third one, all the possibilities, Darati, Datisi, Distamis, Feraton, Ferison, Bocarto. And all that the possibility. Well, if you want, you can learn that by heart, but I will ask no question. But I can ask you, I will ask you, probably, for example, what is the meaning of chemistries? So yeah, major, A, minor, E, conclusion, E. It's enough. You have everything now to analyze syllogism. So my suggestion is begin to study the syllogism in the book of Sister Spangler. They give you some syllogisms. Begin to work on that. It's not easy to work together. It's very good. We are serious. I will not ask for kids, but you are adults, and to work together and to find why I make a mistake. To help other one, to help you. Don't miss that. Okay. Now I think it is time to eat. So you take your